The first of them was born in the year 2245. Maria Vonnegut was the unfortunate mother, and a number of people believe she knew from the start that something was wrong. I can't imagine how she could have. The 9-month pregnancy was normal, the fetus healthy enough, right up until the day of the birth, when it was determined that the stress of leaving the womb had induced a heart attack in the child. An emergency C-section was performed to try to save their life, but it was far too late. Maria's baby son had died in the womb. It was only after removing the body that anyone realized the extent of what had happened. The body was hardly that of a baby, but tiny and wizened, with wet strands of wispy white hair, milky, cataracted eyes, and a slew of teeth that had grown in only to fall out. The skin wasn't smooth and new, but old and wrinkled, and the organs appeared to have seen an impossible amount of use for a baby only 9 months past conception. Well, Maria went into shock. It was determined that further investigations needed to be made. I'm told the mother would later take her own life, after the loss of her baby. The doctors took samples, inspected bits and pieces of the deceased child under microscope, and came to a startling conclusion. Cellular decay. A lifetime's worth. The child resembled an old man because, according to its cellular history, it was one. It was a frightening anomaly, this infant grown old. But at the time, poor baby Zechariah Vonnegut was dismissed as a sad and unfortunate mutant, a cruel and unexplainable act of God. The father, Jonathan Vonnegut, was left without either wife or child. Whatever happened to him, few are sure. What is certain is that Zechariah was only the first of many, because with startling frequency, more of these children were being born. Children who lived their whole lives in the womb and died before they ever saw sunlight. Somehow, in a way that defied scientific understanding, these babies were experiencing time differently. Or rather, time was experiencing them. They lived full lives in the womb. What was mere months for the rest of the world was years for them, decades spent in the dark, never speaking or learning, but living nonetheless. It was impossible to say if they were happy or tortured. They simply were. And then they were not. It began as a sad and unfortunate rarity. It did not stay that way. By the year 2260, every third pregnancy was resulting in these time-addled infants, living their whole lives in the time it took just for them to gestate. Those children who were spared a life in utero weren't much better off. Time experienced them differently as well. It was variable for everyone. No two people's lives could be measured by the same metric anymore. What was for one a few minutes could be months for others, years for someone else, seconds for another. The world crumbled around us as we lost all concept of relative time. Nobody could agree on what was a day, what was an hour. To those of us living slower lives, the rest of the world seemed to age and die in what seemed like days, while to them, we must have seemed immortal. Frustration and anger at the inequality of it all bred violence. The short-lived hated the long-lived. The long-lived went mad from the isolation of watching the world die around them. Nothing about our world was prepared to function this way. How could you form connections with someone who might be dead and buried the next day? How could you have a conversation with someone who seemed to take years just to finish a sentence? Before long, it was everyone. Every single person was experiencing life faster and faster. It wasn't sustainable. More and more children were born wizened and old. People stopped bothering with sex. Why even try for children when they would be dead before you ever saw their face? Birth rates dropped beyond sustainable levels. The world is ending. I spend my days at the hospital, or walking empty streets. Every now and then, a blur of motion reminds me that I'm not alone. People are still here, living the twilight years of their overclocked lives in the same time it takes me to get to the grocery store. By my count, I am 30 years old, and the majority of my life will be spent in a dead world while my people live faster and faster. I am the last generation of humanity, a single man left behind to chronicle the existence of a people that lived too quick and died too fast. I don't think I'll ever know what caused it all. Maybe it doesn't matter.